Hello, welcome to the Awakened and Aligned podcast. I am so happy to be here with you today because we have a special show where we are truly going to awaken and align to our true self. We are coming back to wholeness today. As you know, I am committed to bringing you guests that are all about helping you get in alignment with your true self. And today's guest is, I think I'll go on record and say that over the past decade, but the past 3 decades that I've been in personal development and really focusing on bettering myself, no one has impacted my work as much as our guest today. I have come into her work at pivotal moments of my life. And I've read articles, I've discovered her books, always at turning points that change and put me on a trajectory of really stepping into more awareness of self, more wholeness, and coming back to my true self. So I'm thrilled to bring you today Martha Beck. I'm sure you know her work. I quote her a lot. I send her articles out. I also mentioned her in the self-love experiment and some of her tools, but she has a brand new book out called The Way of Integrity. And it's finding the path to your true self. And so maybe 4 or 5 months ago, her team reached out to me with an advanced copy of the book for a possible endorsement. And of course, I was thrilled to read through the book ahead of time because when I was going through the exercises, and this is one of the things that is so profound about Martha's work, she takes these very deep concepts and these very kind of lofty ideas, but boils them down into actionable steps that you can literally take in the moment. I remember I was diagnosed with depression and I took a pen out and I started doing one of the tools that she had written in the Oprah magazine. And I was like, this works. And this new book, The Way of Integrity, that's out now, is all about coming back to wholeness for yourself. And I think we need that now more than ever. So as I was going through the exercises in this new book, it's like a whole new level of discovering yourself. So I am thrilled to bring you, we have Martha Beck today. Martha, how are you?
Oh my goodness. Well, after that introduction, I'm floating on a cloud. I'm so honored to be here and so honored that so beautiful that, when I'm writing in, my bedroom in the middle of the night going, what do I say? And then to realize that somebody like you has been able to catch the message in the bottle that I threw out into the ocean. It's really sweet and beautiful to be talking to you right now. Thank you so much.
Oh, it's such a pleasure to connect with you because your work is so healing and deep and profound, but the way you approach it, I love it because you really have this psychological, spiritual, and just this grounded human aspect. And you get your work out there. In this new book, I find, it seems like with our books, it's all about timing. But yeah. I could not have imagined a better time for this book to be out in the world.
I think so too. I mean, I didn't mean it to go into a global pandemic and a time of great political rivalry and so on. But integrity simply means being intact, being undivided. And the whole book is about how if we're not divided from our true selves, everything works better for us. But it's also true that as a human species, if we can find oneness, if we can start working together in harmony and alignment, as you always encourage people to do, then yeah, we can heal a lot that's going wrong in the world right now. And if we don't, things are getting weirder and weirder.
Yes. And that's, it's interesting too. I was really looking forward to talking to you today and doing this podcast because it's always, right before you're teaching or leading or connecting, the universe kind of brings you things. And I found that I was getting tested this week and I returned back to your book about some of the tools you use. And I mean, tested by staying in my integrity and truth when there's a lot of pushback right now. And I wanted to talk more about that because there's such a divide in the world. And one of the things you talk about in the book and just with this work is, it's about wholeness. But when you are in your truth and integrity, there is often an alienation from others, whether it's those around you or people. And I'm seeing that a lot in society, in my community. I'd love for you to dive into that more.
Yeah, I wouldn't call it alienation, but it certainly can get spicy. So the whole idea is that your true self is your true nature. And in this, there is a paradigm where nature and culture are opposite each other. So culture is the pressure people put on each other to behave in predictable ways, acceptable ways. And it's any culture. From every family has a culture, every nation has a culture, every religion, every ethnicity, and so on. And as long as your true nature and all aspects of your culture are singing the same tune, then you're whole. But when we get to areas in our lives where we're pressured by our culture, whether that's family or whatever, to leave or abandon aspects of our true nature, what typically happens is we sell out our true nature and we do what's necessary to be accepted by our culture. That is actually alienating. And that at that point, integrity just means being one thing, like an integer, whole and undivided. So the moment you abandon your true nature and try to fit in with the culture, and those two things are separate, you are no longer in integrity, which is one thing. You are in duplicity, which is two things. And you may not even know it because these things happen before we can even talk. But we feel that split inside as psychological suffering. And it causes breakdowns of various kinds in order to wake us up so that we can retrace our steps back to our true nature. And that's what heals us.
Yeah, and that's the power of, I guess the first thing is to recognize that we have split.
Yeah. And the way you know is just, I think I list 6 different like major symptoms that I've seen. One is you get bad moods, maybe anxiety, maybe anger, maybe depression, whatever it is. Your physical body doesn't do well. When we actually are saying things like, I'm fine, when you're not, when you're saying things that aren't true, your whole body, your immune system, your muscles, the whole thing gets weaker. And when you tell the truth, it gets stronger. So your physical body may break down, your relationships, your career may seem to just have a lot of bad luck. You may have addictions. And there's one other, but I can't remember what it is right now, but it's not good.
Yeah.
And all of these are signals that you're divided from yourself. And the cure for all of them, ultimately, is to reestablish your integrity.
Yes. And have you gone through this in your own life?
Ooh, have I ever?
Yes.
Yeah, I kind of follow my own trajectory because I think I was destined to be culturally unacceptable at all times. So, I grew up in the most Mormon of all Mormon environments, went off to Harvard, which was as different as it could be when I was 17, had a baby with Down syndrome while I was at Harvard getting my PhD, started there at 17, didn't leave for years, and could have terminated the pregnancy late in the pregnancy. I had that option, but my nature said no. My nature said, I'm very pro-choice. I'm not going to judge anyone for anything. But choosing to keep that baby really put me on the outs with Harvard intellectualism. And then, went back to Utah because I knew my choice would be accepted. And turned out I really didn't like Mormonism. And I left the church, and I had been sexually abused by my father, who was a big name in the church. So I got death threats, and it was very spicy, as I said. And I ended up losing. When I was 29, I made a commitment that I wouldn't tell a single lie for a calendar year, no lies of any kind, polite or otherwise. And during that year, I started to get well, and I started to get happy. But on the outside, I lost my religion, my family of origin, most of the friends I'd made as a child, my marriage, my career, my job, my home, pretty much everything that looked like a life situation. And yet it made me happier than I was before.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I feel that. You lost everything, but you gained your whole self. It sounds like you gained really the truth and integrity and really what matters most. And it's put you on this path of all of the work you do today.
Yeah, absolutely.
A lot of listeners probably can relate to your story or different pieces to it, because I find sometimes we feel very stuck in trying to move forward because there's that people pleaser that comes out, or that wanting to not rock the boat with our family or our religious cultural upbringings. Talk about how any suggestions you would say to give people guidance, or how you actually were able to keep aligning with your truth and trusting it would be okay.
Yeah, it's so interesting because I have coached people for years and years, and I've written self-help, and I've always said, I can tell you how to sort through your insides, but I can't really know how your life is going to go outside because I can't control the factors around you. Well, after really looking hard at this issue of coming back to your truth and regaining your integrity, I found out there actually are predictable things that happen. So the book is built around Dante's Divine Comedy. And that starts with Dante completely lost in the middle of his life, doesn't know how he got there, but things are not going well. And he has to go through the inferno or hell in order to go all the way out the other side to paradise. So he goes all the way down through hell to the center of the earth. And when he keeps going the same direction, down becomes up because he's past the center and he's on his way to paradise. But first, he has to go through a period called purgatory, which means cleanse. And in the inferno, he figures out what's true for him inside. In purgatory, he has to actually behave that way on the outside. So we all know therapy junkies who go to therapy and feel really good in the therapist's office and never change their behavior outside. Mm-hmm. And that just sticks you in therapy as a kind of therapy addict. But when you come out of a search for truth and you say, oh my goodness, I am actually going to walk the talk, you get what I call change back attacks from the people around you. Oh. And that takes, I talk about this a lot in the book. There's something called tribal shaming, where your group tries to pull you back in. Yeah. And you can resist that. If you can sustain the transformational tension of that and just hold on, what happens is that your whole life sort of clears from the last level where you've been stuck and sort of zooms upward, which is what happens to Dante when he gets to the top of purgatory and goes to paradise. So there's this awful period of not knowing what's going on and having people push back, but there are really good tools you can use to survive that and even thrive during it. And then it leaves you in a really good place.
Yes. One of the tools that I've recognized in my life, and I know you talk about in the book, is the teacher. And it's in the process where we meet the teacher when we're ready to leave the dark. And you say that in the book. And I find teachers come to us at the right time. You know, law of attraction, the universe kind of is bringing you the people. Yeah. And so talk more about the power of teachers, whether it's a coach, a therapist that can actually help, finding books like yours.
Right. Well, in Joseph Campbell, the great anthropologist, in his famous Heroes Saga, which he got by comparing legends from many cultures around the world, he talks about how the first thing that happens is that the hero is just wandering around and gets a call to adventure, which the hero then refuses. That's the second step, refusing the call, because it means leaving your ordinary life and going through something dangerous and frightening. Mm-hmm. And then the call comes again. And finally, the hero says yes. And at that point, a teacher appears. And if you look, like I use the comparison of Star Wars, which is another hero saga, where Luke Skywalker is ready to be trained. And who shows up but Yoda, this tiny little critter who doesn't look like a Jedi Knight. And the teacher often doesn't look like what we expect. But you're right. There's a moment where a teacher shows up, a literal teacher. Like when I was 17, it was my art professor at Harvard. Or a book when I was 23, it was the Chinese book, The Tao Te Ching, that saved my life. When I was 19, it was The Critique of Pure Reason by Immanuel Kant. There was always a teacher, either on paper or in the flesh, who showed up and shook me out of my old worldview. It didn't really give me any answers, but said, hey, it's time to hit the road to adventure.
Yeah, it's a pivotal moment. And I think all of our journeys, and we can reflect back and see those profound kind of turning points.
Yeah.
And then we dive in deeper. I find there's also times where we either outgrow the teacher or the teacher's not needed.
I would say always. Yeah. In fact, my undergraduate major was Chinese. I lived in Asia for a while, and I kind of absorbed a lot of Asian culture. And one of the things they say there is you will always have to kill your teacher, which doesn't mean physically killing. It's not
right.
What it means is that, well, there's a good metaphor in Buddhism where a man is going through a river and his goal is the top of a high mountain, and he comes to a river, can't get across it, so he cuts down some trees, builds a raft, gets across the river, and then picks up the raft and tries to drag it up the mountain with him. And at a certain point, he has to realize the raft was necessary for a time to get through a certain period. And now it's time to let go of the raft in order to climb the mountain. And that happens to us every single time we find a teacher. We will outgrow it because ultimately The teacher is just leading us to what I call the inner teacher, our own sense of truth, our ability to feel what's harmonious and aligned for us. And at that point, we let go of the teacher and the outside teacher and go with the teacher that is deep, deep, deep inside.
Yeah, that's exactly the path to being whole again, and it aligns with the integrity within us all, really. Yeah. You know, it's
Exactly.
interesting
Yeah.
because there's a part in your book too, there's an exercise. What I love about you really take us through this process and use the stories as an example, but then you have really actionable tools and exercises. And one you mentioned, it's actually called My Do Not Mention Zones on page 72 and 73. And I find that this one's very helpful because there are certain topics and people, past experiences, even world events that
Yeah.
we just don't want to think about or look at because it's heavy, it's hard. This
Yeah.
process, can you take us through maybe if you remember the exercise or just the power of looking at the things we don't want to look at?
Yeah, the first thing to do, and I put a trigger warning in the book, and I'm going to put one here, because if you're with a therapist who can like really keep a tight ship and keep you from falling apart, you can go into really, really deep. If you've had really severe trauma or something, you need that container. So don't use this for a severe trauma when you're on your own. But even when things aren't really traumatic, there are subjects that make us uneasy and we don't want to think about them. That is always a sign that we should think about them.
Yes.
So like, if you, for example, a lot of people didn't want to believe that they needed to social distance during COVID. And again, there may be listeners out there who still think that we don't need to, but it took a long time for people to realize, no, this is not. I remember when the shutdown started, and I was talking to the woman who helps me run my company, and we were going to do a retreat that May. And I said, we're going to have to cancel the retreat. And she's like, we're not there yet. I mean, it's maybe a couple of weeks. And I was like, dude, I study sociology. I know a little bit about epidemiology. We have to face the facts. This is going to be a year or more before it goes away. And it was not pleasant to think about it. But because I'd sort of steeled myself to you may die soon. It could be that your relationship's feeling shaky and you don't want to look at that. It could be that your physical health is deteriorating and you're avoiding noticing it. Somewhere there's a do not mention zone. And that's where you want to gently, lovingly, compassionately sit down with a journal and allow yourself to start writing down what you know without letting yourself know, and feel without letting yourself feel. And that's how you find the places where you're out of integrity so you can heal them.
Yeah, and it really comes back to truth. And
Yeah.
that's what I value about this and the teaching that kind of goes throughout the whole book. We have to look at the discomforts in order to be honest with ourselves, because honesty is part of integrity. And there's parts that we haven't been honest with ourselves, and we have to get real.
Yeah, absolutely. And what's even more confusing, Shannon, is that sometimes we don't know. We really, truly don't know that we're not happy, that we're not comfortable. It's one thing I do with crowds when there used to be crowds, when I talk to a large group, I'll stop right in the middle and say, is everyone comfortable? And they're like, yeah, why are you asking? And I say, no, seriously, are you really comfortable? And they're like, yes, just go on. And then I say, if you were at home alone, how many of you would be sitting in the exact position you're in right now? And no one, of course, raises their hand. And I say, why? And it takes them a long time to realize they wouldn't be sitting that way because it's not very comfortable.
Mm.
And the problem isn't the discomfort. The problem is that their bodies know they aren't comfortable, but their minds genuinely believe they are comfortable at the very same time. These two opposite beliefs in one soul, in one mind, that's duplicity, that's not integrity. It's totally innocent. It comes from socialization, but it splits us in two. And ultimately, if we stop, if if we aren't able to articulate the places where we are uncomfortable, we could say stay stuck our whole lives.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what happens. Decades go by, and I feel that that's where the addictions come in, and
Absolutely.
we're
Yeah.
hiding from self or unaware. But there
Yep.
are steps we can take, and there's actually questions. I'm a big fan of questions, journal questions, or even just asking yourself. And I know you are too. You actually
Yeah.
talk about the 4 questions that we can ask to connect back to peace. And one of them is, am I feeling what I really want to feel? Talk
Yeah.
more about the 4 questions if you can.
Okay, they're pretty simple. Am I feeling what I really want to feel? And what I really feel? Do I know what I really know? Do I say what I really mean? And do I do what I really want? And a lot of people, when I say, ideally, you would feel what you feel, know what you know, say what you mean, and do what you want. They're like, if I did that, I would just run amok. I couldn't. So you can't just jump in to a life where people are suffering and maybe in denial about things and say, hey, do whatever you want. It's not that easy. First, you have to be really aware of what you're experiencing in your life. Are you happy? Are you healthy? Are you rested? Do you feel loved? Do you feel longing? Are you pushing away sadness? That kind of thing. And you really get honest about what you feel.
Mm-hmm.
And that'll take you to what you know. Like,
Mm.
is this relationship working? Do I have to let go of my children and let myself have the empty nest? Or do I need to face the fact that someday I will die? So you start to know the things you're afraid to know.
Yeah.
And as you get into that and the feelings come as the knowledge grows and you become, it's a real crucible. It's going through the inferno. And at the other side of it, you say, okay, now I know my truth. Is that what I'm actually stating in my words every day? Do I lie? Because lying, it's so interesting, Shannon. They've done studies where they just took random people and said, hey, how about you stop lying for the next 3 weeks? And the people were like, all right. And so they had no way of policing whether they did this or not. But the people who said they would even try to lie less had fewer doctor visits. They had less depression. Their relationships got better. Everything just zoomed in a positive direction the moment they started saying what they meant and not saying what they didn't mean.
Amazing.
So do you say what you really mean? And then there's finally, are you doing what you really want? If you get up and you go to a job you hate and you have to pretend that you don't mind, that's a self-abandonment, a self-betrayal, and a kind of deep untruth. Are you participating in a relationship or in a system that is oppressive and wrong? That's where civil disobedience comes from. The Gandhis and the Mandelas and the Martin Luther Kings. They were doing what they had to do, doing what they really wanted to do, and heroically and self-sacrificingly. So it's not an easy road, but it's a wonderful road.
Yeah, I love it's not an easy road, but it's a wonderful road. And this aspect of heroicness that really is, it's connecting back to having the courage within ourselves to be the hero of our own life. I really feel that's what this is all about.
It is. And the one endless ally who will never betray us is our suffering. Because the one thing that will get us to be courageous enough to heal ourselves is the fact that we're in a lot of pain. When people, this is speaking from my own experience, when something hurts enough, if a lie hurts you enough, you will end up telling the truth eventually, even if you're afraid you'll be killed. When I wrote my book about leaving Mormonism, I got very credible death threats, very descriptive, very detailed, and truly expected that I would be killed or at least put in prison. I was threatened with all kinds of things. My family got together and tried to get me arrested and put in prison. And the ability or the willingness to say what was true was so necessary for my own integrity and for what I thought might help other people in that same system, that death actually was far preferable to staying silent at that
Yeah,
point.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's true integrity, and it's true truth. It's aligning with the truth that is so undeniable. You become almost a martyr of it or unapologetic and living in that truth. I think
Yeah.
we're seeing this now. I wanted to kind of talk a little bit. if you can relate this to cancel culture, because I'm
Yeah.
seeing people in all different fields who are speaking what looks to be their truth or integrity for them, but there's a large social backlash of canceling them, whether it's
Yeah.
unfollow, getting their book, whatever it may be, they're canceling them.
Right.
And so
Right.
I respect and understand that everyone has a life path and a soul journey. So that's kind of like part of what they're going through. But I'm seeing it in spaces like the self-help community. And I was wondering if you
Yeah.
can relate integrity to what we're seeing as a mass kind of movement of cancel culture, of things that either I would imagine the people who are speaking out, it feels true for them, but then there's the whole culture that says that's not an integrity, you're canceled.
Yeah. And that actually Dante deals with it in the Divine Comedy. If you go down, famously, his Inferno had 9 circles of hell. They get worse as you go down. The
Yeah.
first 7 are just for people who were kind of bumbling along and accidentally did something wrong. Like, oh, I didn't know. I wasn't really in control. I became an addict. I stole stuff. They really didn't mean to. And these are he calls them sins of incontinence, which just means stuff you did because you didn't know how not to.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
then he gets to the realm of the violent. And the violent live in this endless circle of attack. And if you look at the way the brain works, there are 2 aspects of the brain that can get activated during anger. And one type of anger will save your life and save humanity, and the other type will destroy it. The first type is what Dante sees in the Inferno, which is just, and it's something that the psychologist Jonathan Haidt calls the righteous mind. And it's very emotional. It's not logical at all. And it wants to attack. And it's sort of in a blood frenzy almost. And it grows and grows. If somebody's in a political argument and they're in this mindset and you show them absolutely clear evidence that their position is inaccurate, factually inaccurate, their convictions will increase and their rage and their violence will increase, whether it's physical or just internal. Then there's another way to get angry. And this is the just mind. And the just mind looks around and says, there's an injustice here, but instead of attack, I am going to figure out what I can do to peacefully create something that addresses this issue. And whether that's civil disobedience or whether it's sitting down, taking your spouse to therapy and really listening for once, or, or at least noticing that they're not really listening and telling the truth about that. It's not passing judgment. It's making judgments. It's healthy discernment, and it wants information. It changes when it gets new evidence. It doesn't double down. It allows itself to change its mind. And ultimately, it aligns with the truth. And that is integrity. Cancel culture is the bad kind.
I got full body goosebumps when you said that, because it is about not passing judgment and having healthy discernment. Yeah. And I find, as you said, that is what it's about, coming back into integrity. And I find that that's the missing piece right now. There's such a divide, no matter what the beliefs are. If we can all kind of come into this agreement that we don't have to judge others, we're all part of the human race, use healthy discernment, but then, as you said, come to a point where you're looking for peace. That was key.
And the key, the way to make the switch, and I do an exercise in the book about this, that anger wants to destroy. If you're feeling an urge to destroy, that you're in the grip of the violent mind. But if you begin to create, so when I was at Harvard, there was a lot of feminist intensity there, and there would be a lot of getting together and like raging against the patriarchy. And then if anybody ever said, well, what shall we make instead? Everybody got really quiet, because the righteous rage thing, the unhealthy anger, it only destroys, it never creates. Yeah. And the moment you start to create something better, you are engaged in problem solving and information gathering and compassion and empathy and understanding, and everything shifts.
I believe this is the way forward for all of us. This will save humanity.
I hope so. If anything can, it will. Yeah.
Well, even Elizabeth Gilbert, for your book, she said this radiant book will not only change your life, but perhaps even save it. And as I was reading through the book too, I felt the same way. There are life-saving tools in here for us to move forward collectively in more integrity with self, and also for us to improve our own personal lives, with the ways that we've been out of balance. And I love that you've presented this and brought this into the world. There's another exercise in the book that I found fascinating, and it's the exercise You Are the World. And it's towards the end of the book, but I felt that this was so relevant for right now because there's a lot of issues. There's environmental issues, there's racial issues, social injustice. There's so many topics and areas and pain points on the planet. And what I've been seeing, especially over the past year, is some people are very passionate about certain ones, whereas others are passionate about others. And some are expecting everyone to be passionate about the same. So there's this kind of pushback. But when I went through the You Are the World exercise, I had a profound shift because I realized we're all kind of connected on this planet together. Would you mind sharing more about You Are the World?
Yeah, as you get more and more into your personal integrity, you'll notice that as Maya Angelou says, the function of healing is to heal someone else, or sorry, the function of freedom is to free someone else. And what that means is that you start to naturally, the happiness and wholeness that you feel starts to spill over into service. Now, the way you are meant to serve, your personal mission, is going to be specific to you. There's nobody who can address all the issues that we're facing, the problems in the world. But in order to determine your mission, once you've reached a degree of integrity, I always have people sit down and write about the issue that bothers them the most. So one of them for me is ecosystem destruction. So, and there are always people that are responsible for creating some of the problem. So sit down, write a letter about the thing that worries you most, and write it to the people who are like committing the problem, the atrocities. So for me, it's people who who have no regard for the environment, people who destroy wildlife, to destroy wild environments, and put toxins there instead. And so you write that down, write it all down, everything you want the bad guys to stop doing, everything they should do instead. They should start taking better care of the earth. They should start caring about creatures other than themselves, and so on. So write it all out. Then go up to the top of the letter, scratch out the bad guy's name, and put your own self in the place of the world. And then read through the letter, seeing if there's a metaphorical way in which you are doing exactly what the bad guys are doing. I know this one woman who is obsessed with healing the oceans, but she has to go all the time. So she's constantly forcing not illegal drugs, but uppers and downers, caffeine and whatever, right? Pouring toxins into the ocean of her own body.
Yeah.
I'm all about animals and stuff. Well, there are times when I mistreat the animal that is my own body. There are times when I put toxins into it. So we begin to emanate whatever frequency it is we're actually practicing in our lives. And if we begin emanating integrity that is treating our own bodies and lives the way we wish others would treat the world, we become part of the solution rather than part of the problem.
Yeah. That's amazing. And I know I took myself through the exercise too, and I had no idea that it would be like, okay, scratch the name out, now write your name. And I was like, oh my gosh, this makes so much sense because even the Course in Miracles, your outside world as a reflection of your inner state. But what you get at is we are the solution. And I think sometimes, especially in this current age, it can become, we feel hopeless. It can become exhausting, trying so hard to do what is right. But then we recognize that we have more power than we've been led to believe. Truly, I believe that's what this is about: integrity for self and then helping the planet.
Yeah. And the great relief is that it happens automatically. It happens by the power of whatever force created it all. Whether you view that as nature or something divine, we don't have to do it. And not us individually, not us even collectively, but something even greater than all of us put together can use us if we put ourselves in alignment with truth.
Yeah, I think one of the best ways to do that as we start to close out, I could just keep talking to you forever, but
I love talking to you.
Wonderful. One of the exercises you share in the book, and also with just a quick takeaway, is people, and you shared this study, an actionable thing is to just be in truth with self and practice looking at your white lies. And I guess what I'm getting at here is, what is a couple quick things that people could do to start being more integrity with themselves? I loved the one where you go a few weeks without just lying, just period. See how you feel.
Yeah, I mean, I started out hardcore. I didn't tell a lie for a year, and my whole life blew up for the good. But try it for a day, a week, whatever feels kind of exciting but not overwhelming. And don't tell a single lie. And notice sometimes it'll just slip out. Someone says, "How are you?" You know, fine. And then you think, wait a second, I'm not fine. I feel terrible. So then you can say, you know, actually, it's kind of a tough day. You don't have to get all radical. You don't have to insult people. You don't have to tell everybody your private news, but you do have to notice when you're letting lies slip out to other people. And when you're that, as you start to notice, you'll see where you're lying to yourself. And that is a wound you must heal to be free of psychological suffering.
Yeah, and then once we recognize these lies, what would be the next step we could do to kind of mend that imbalance?
I would start by writing down the truth. For me, writing is safer than and it feels contained and like I can grab it. So I have journals of plenty, and I would sit down and write. I just did this earlier today. I had an online encounter that didn't go quite the way I wanted to, and I was getting a little antsy. So I sat down with my journal and I said, "Here's what I'm really feeling," and oh, here's what really caused it. You know, I didn't take time to get myself centered, and I felt a little off centered. And as a result, I left my integrity, get back into integrity, and healed that breach. And for me, writing it in a journal is precious. And that's where I got all the material to write about the memoir
Yeah.
aspects of this book.
It's beautiful. The whole book could be a beautiful journey to ourself, and there's lots of journal activities. And I think that's what's really special is what you're getting at is it's a moment by moment. It's not like once we do reach the paradise, it's forevermore and we don't keep coming back. We now have the tools, though, to return back to integrity much faster. Would you
Yeah.
agree? Yeah.
Yes, and it's like a muscle. The more you do it, the easier it gets to do. And the results at the end, I mean, I just did this because I wanted to be in harmony with facts, with science, with reality, because I really believe in science. I also believe there's a lot science doesn't understand. The closer I get to living my absolute truth, the more magical, miraculous things happen to me. I mean, crazy magical miracles.
Yes. Oh, I think that's beautiful. And we'll close it on that, because you can live a miraculous, miraculous life when you are in your integrity. And so I am so happy we got to connect tonight. I'd love for you to just share. Of course, the book is out, available now wherever books are sold. I love this book. I even had a beautiful opportunity to endorse it. Where else can people find you on your website and social media?
Yeah, just marthabeck.com.
Yeah.
Or, you know, I guess on Instagram, I'm the Martha Beck, because there are a lot of them.
Well, I did share my endorsement here. I love that I had a chance to read the book early, and I said, in an age of nonstop pressure to conform, we often lose connection to truth and meaning. But I truly believe Martha Beck has written this masterpiece, and it shows us how to embrace our authentic self for unlimited freedom. So thank you, Martha, for being here with me today and giving us all the gift of a way to tap into unlimited freedom.
Thank you so much, Shannon. And thank you for all the work you do.
Thank you. Have a beautiful day. And thanks for joining, everyone, the Awakened Aligned podcast. And make sure to go check out Martha and all her work.